This week we address the items in Lesson 9 of Module 3 concerning a very curious Supreme Court case that I think speaks volumes again about how segregation laws were enforced and dealt with in the United States, and some really interesting problems of equality. The problem this week concerns the issue of miscegenation, laws that prohibit interracial marriage, that came to a head in a 1967 Supreme Court decision called Loving versus Virginia. This case stemmed from the enforcement of a Virginia law that was passed about 1924 prohibiting interracial marriage in the state of Virginia. And it also prohibited people of mixed race who were wed in other states from coming back and living in the state of Virginia, as the Lovings had done. They had been married in Washington, D.C., and came back to Virginia to live, and hence came under the coverage of this statute. This particular law, and the background to it that you will encounter in your reading, is an excellent rendition of a so-called Jim Crow law that attempted to cover not just political problems and political segregation, but also cultural and social relationships. What's also curious about this case is that it was decided in 1967, over a decade after the Brown decision in 1954, and yet, even in 1966 and 1967, by the time this case came to the Supreme Court of the United States, the Virginia Supreme Court had unanimously upheld the judgment against the Lovings, enforcing that law, and I think knowing well that the Supreme Court of the United States would reverse its decision. But for reasons we might think about together, nonetheless, the Supreme Court of Virginia had decided they would enforce that law and perhaps just leave it to the Supreme Court of the United States to act on its own to reverse this early 20th century statute. We'll also, this week, be looking at some more of the book by C. Van Woodward, The Strange Career of Jim Crow, and we'll be able to place the problem of interracial marriage, miscegenation, and of course the Loving case in the broader context that C. Van Woodward provides in his marvelous historical book.